welcome back to my channel, The Grim Reader. I am Kathy Grimm and I am The Grim Reader. And yes, so let's get into it. My reading, etc. Let me chat about the etc. first. So the first week back, and my mind is a mess and a muddle, and my body it was okay, everything was fine, but it's just always such a jolt to the system to come back to these brand new groups of people that I need to get used to, and they need to get used to me. Plus we're using a completely different textbook in two of my classes. Plus my schedule is such that I teach 3 classes back to back. I know that for high school teachers this sounds like nothing, but for this old lady here, it's only 3 times a week. That's the other thing, thank goodness. But it's from 8:30 until 12:30 all the way through, with 20-minute breaks, which for me melt down to almost nothing. I have to take care of, moving to the next room, all kinds of stuff. And 20 minutes is nothing for me. Plus, I'm not that fast. And so it was definitely a jolt to my system, such that I started feeling really kind of having a bit of a flare, my joint pain, arthritic joint pain mainly. I have also sort of joint pain, like point pain, pressure pain and stuff. But with me, it's really just arthritis of whatever sort. I had either the rheumatoid sometimes. I think some of my long-term things with the heel was sort of brought on by my tendency to have these inflammatory issues. But then also the back, every day the back is sore. But so what happened was Friday started getting really sore, and then yesterday was a real pain day, and it affects my psyche in not so great ways. It was fine, and I took the day off, but it's as if it's still, the first week is always rough, because it's like my body's sort of getting used to this new getting up early, being on a schedule, having a ton of things to think about in terms of what I need to get done, and me being the person diagnosed with general anxiety person, it sort of affects everything, and it's all good. And there was like fun stuff that happened in the week. For example, sorry, the sunlight is kind of annoying, I apologize. What was it, Thursday night? So the night where it turns 10 a.m. in Tokyo is when the Hobonichi site opens, and all us Hobonichi freaks get on the website and order stuff. And it is kind of like it's sort of nerve-wracking or nail-bitey, because it's like, will the things sell out? Because they sell out really quickly. And I ordered all my stuff really easily within a couple of minutes. And then I realized, there's one thing that I kind of did want, and then it seemed to be sold out. And so an example of me being old lady too much online, I have some Reddit groups that I dip into. One of them is the Hobonichi group, and they were actually really helpful. They actually pointed me to the live feed of a really good stationery store, Yaseka Stationery in New York, I guess. There's a whole bunch I have a list of stationery stores that I like, and they had a really fun live stream. I liked the people there too. They were really funny and cool, and they were just counting down and showing us the items. And then what happened was, the thing that I didn't get, I was a bit sad that I didn't get it. You're always like, the FOMO is real. And then the next day I noticed that the Reddit was like, you can get this one thing here at this stationery store in Canada, and then suddenly someone posted that it was available at what I'm going to call the evil site. And we all know that the evil site, which starts with A. And I'm like, really? This thing that's sold out is at the evil site? And I go on there and I nabbed it. And apparently it's now gone. But there was a short window when it was available on the evil site. And it's going to actually be arriving tonight. So, of course, sooner than the stuff from Tokyo that I ordered. So, wow, I'm excited. I was really happy. And September's my birthday month, and this is a big birthday because I'm an old lady, officially turning 60. And so, I'm like, it was like Christmas. And of course, now that I have a Voxer friend that I can I can Vox, I'm like, it's so exciting. Because it's as if you understand this, you understand it. If you don't, like most people, like stationery, getting excited about stationery, who thought of it? But it's sort of like I am not a pen person yet, really, like a fountain pen person. the fountain pen people are pretty diehard and intense, and I can sort of understand it because I am a stationery person, but I'm really more of a paper. I do love pens, but I'm not yet into, because I'm sort of not very, I'm clumsy, and fountain pens can be messy, and I grew up having to use them in school, but I do love them, but I'm not as into them as a lot of other people are. But it's sort of like all of, anyway, if you know, you're into this stuff. So that was sort of a high point of the week, was the Thursday, Friday with the Hobonichi ordering. And it was just so much fun. And so let me get into my reading. So I'm in the Eustace Diamonds, which has been going on for a little while now. I'm almost done, trying to get it finished. And so let me give you summary thoughts of it. And of course, I'm not quite at the end, but I kind of think I know what's going to happen. Like, I don't think there's going to be big surprises yet. Although I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to our main heroine, Lizzie Eustace, who is she's a conniving, manipulative, self-centered young woman. And what's interesting about the novel is it's a novel that's fixed, that has at its core, besides the diamonds, a negative, or person whose moral character or fiber or whatever is not there. And that's always interesting to me, like the portrayal of, she's borderline evil, she's more just kind of conniving and self-centered, like in a kind of soap opera type way. And it's really interesting how we see Trollope, or the narrator at least, wavering, kind of sometimes describing her in really negative terms, but then also almost sort of falling under a spell a little bit, and we almost seem to feel somewhat sorry for her. And I think it is I think he's done that on purpose. I'm not sure. Hi, Lily. Oh yeah, the whole Lily thing, yeah. The trolls saying that she's overweight and therefore we're abusing her. I'm not even going to talk about that. Hi, Lily, you're not abused. So back to Eustace Diamond. Sorry for the digression there. So I think what he's doing there is that, in a way, when someone is completely negative, I mean, you do kind of, I'm not exactly feel sorry for them, but with her you do, because she's this young woman, maybe because she's a woman in this kind of male world, but you do get the sense that she doesn't really know how to be happy. Like, she's never happy, and that's like that's almost a fairy tale upshot of negativity on evil people in fairy tales. They never get they're never happy. They never win, so to speak. And it's almost like that's going on here too. And then what he does really well is he does spend a lot of time with in some of the chapters with her cohort, and all of her cohort are somewhat interesting, but also kind of like her, shallow, self-absorbed, and out for themselves. So a person who is not good won't have good friends, or won't, like, the way they interact with the interface with the world will be sort of somehow unsatisfying to as well. And we see that with her. She's all the people she's with, so you do get the sense that she's kind of alone. Like, she doesn't really have anyone she can confide in, because but that's her own fault, because the only way she knows how to interact with the world is transactional. Like, what can I get out of this person? And we all know, that's just that's a recipe for being disappointed. And or the only time you can sort of be happy is when you're winning, and that means someone is losing. And so, and he's emphasizing that point. Here comes Lily. She wants to say hi, apparently. He's a tail. So he does it all really well. But another thing he does well is the diamonds. They're more than a MacGuffin in here, because they become this very overly determined object. And Lizzie, or Lizzie, there's a number of times when Lily, she wants to be rid of the diamonds, because they're such they're dragging her down because of what happens with them, and they just become a bigger and bigger problem for her. And so she sort of wants to be rid of them, but how can she get rid of it? It's all because she didn't give them up in the beginning. So it's really good. It's really good. It's definitely, so there's country Trollope and there's city Trollope, and this is urban Trollope, this is city Trollope. And I still think the country Trollope of the Barsetshire is special, and there's a sweetness to it, as I keep saying. And the city Trollope is sort of more about the world in general, and most people are not perfect, and kind of a disappointing. A lot of his male characters are somewhat disappointing. Like they're not Dr. Thorne, as I recall. He was great, and a couple of other people from Barsetshire. And it's almost as if it's sort of moving on into, I haven't read a lot about Balzac, but it's moving on into everyone is negative. Not quite. Or at least in this novel, the one sort of quibble I might have with it is that his good person, he has a very good woman in here who's a governess, is not in the foreground. She's in the background. Almost it's like it's like, oh, she's good and that's boring. Like that's what I like to think about Framley Parsonage, who had this foreground, this really, really good, almost too good to be true woman, and she was kind of centered in a more positive way. She almost saintly, and she came and took care of someone in the other guy's household, and she ended up marrying really well. I forget one of the main people is in love with this woman, and so it was sort of like she got what she wanted. And I don't know what's going to happen with Lucy, is the good person in here, but it's as if he leaves her behind a little bit in the tale of the story, as if he himself is more interested in his evil, or at least conniving heroine Lizzie, than he is in Lucy. I'm also fascinated by the portrayal of evil or negative people because of psychological reasons, but I also sort of think that's sort of a reason why I liked Gilead and all that. So an interesting and fully fleshed out portrayal of goodness that's not shallow or trite or sentimental is interesting to me, because it's not that, it doesn't happen very often. We're more about evil. And so that's where sort of Dickens falls short. All of his good women, for example, are very, and like even Little Dorrit, it's a little hard to take sometimes Little Dorrit was sort of interesting, but she kind of sort of receded, and then all the other people the awfulness of her family kind of took over. It's very good, and it goes into the detective territory, because guess what happens with the diamonds? I won't go into more details, but so you get more police procedural stuff, and the police are wonderful. I love them. That aspect of it, it's almost like early, like Edgar Allan Poe and his early detective stories. Not quite, it's not that much, but it's going in that direction, which kind of goes along with it being urban. It's definitely city Trollope. And so, wonderful read. And I have a feeling for some people this is one of their favorites of Trollope. And yeah, I'll have once I get through all the palaces, I guess I've already read 3 of them this year, which is hard for me to believe. Wow, this is the 3rd one, because I read Can You Forgive Her, and then Phineas Finn, and now this one. Wow, I'm racing through them because I'm listening to them and then I dip in. The other thing that I decided to pick up, just because of this, is, I have to sort of be careful, and now Lily's sitting on it. Lily is sitting on the book. You like the book too? She wants to be close to Mama. Okay, let me retrieve the book from Lily. So the other one I decided to go back to was, I wanted to finish 1 volume of Dorothy Richardson's Pilgrimage. So it's 4 volumes, and within each volume there's 3 shorter novels. And they're short novels. They're, Shorty September-esque novels. Shout out to that read-along. In case you haven't noticed, I am not participating in hardly any of the read-alongs and read-a-thons or read-a-thons, I guess. But Shorty September is upon us with all the fun stuff for that. There's so many other ones. Anyway, back to Richardson. 3 novels in this 1 volume, and I've read the first 2, and now I'm reading the last one called Honeycomb. And so these are autobiographical novels written in the early 20th century. Her dates are 1873 through 1957, and she's a sort of somewhat forgotten modernist. I think she is pretty forgotten. While I was doing my research on long novels, back when I came upon Margaret Young, the American writer of one of the longest novels ever, Miss Mackintosh, I stumbled upon this British writer, Dorothy Richardson, and her long work of autofiction called Pilgrimage, and each of the novels has separate names. Trying to get out of the sunlight here. So she's fascinating, and I love her style, but it's very unique to her. And it is stream of consciousness, and there's a pretty active society of Dorothy Richardson stuff, even though she's largely forgotten, and they have a journal and they publish articles. Yeah, one of the articles from there. So apparently she also has quite a few short stories that she wrote, so which I'll get to once I've done with her big work, Pilgrimage. And in the beginning of this article, written by someone called Daisy Flynn, apparently here's a quote from Richardson. So regarding the term stream of consciousness. Okay, I'll read the whole thing. In 1918, May Sinclair described Richardson's writing using the phrase, quote, stream of consciousness. This quote has clung to Richardson's work, often being cited to support the argument about her prose, that her prose imitates a stereotypically feminine, uninterrupted flow of thought. So she was called stream of consciousness way back, and she herself took issue with that term, and here's what she wrote about it. It's not a stream, it's a pool, a sea, an ocean. It has depth in greater depth, and when you think you've reached the bottom, there is nothing there. And when you give yourself up to one current, you are suddenly possessed by another. And I love that quote by Richardson herself from an interview towards the end of her life. And I love the sort of the juxtaposing a river, a stream, which to a more the pulling back and forth of the tides of an ocean. And it does really fit with her writing, which is very, there are scenes of great clarity, and then there are scenes where things are a little muddled, but it's all kind of filtered through the narrator's view of the world. It is very internal. So in that sense, it is sort of internal. And what I really do like about it is she's contemplating something in her environment, usually something pretty abstract, like light or flowers or view or the sun on the garden. And she sort of falls into a sort of rhapsodious joy, like the joy of existence, the joy of being alive. And I resonate with that very much, because it's as if I kind of feel the same way, like I won't say my moments of greatest joy, but a lot of like the way I interact with the world, it's like it's hard to explain it to anyone else what I'm feeling, if that makes sense. The whole neurodivergent stuff, and I sense a sort of the kindred spirit here too. That, and so that's what writing is for her. Is that she's holding. It's a memory tool, a memory aid to these moments of great joy that are abstract, and oftentimes, like, she'll be describing a person or how she feels about a person or how she sees a person interacting with the world and how that person seems a certain way. And it's funny how sometimes when she's describing like dinners or groups of people and even like conversations or dialogue, it is kind of sometimes hard to follow. For one thing, I do think it's very British, and there's a lot of Britishisms or from her class background. And that's another fascinating thing about the book, is her class situation is such that she has a lot of sort of cultural cachet from being well educated and having gone to Germany and speaking German and speaking French and being also a musician and interested in music, but she's impoverished, and so she has to take these quasi-teacher positions in these homes of these people who. So the middle section, the middle novel, Backwater, it's actually a group. She's teaching not lower class, but sort of solidly middle class girls. And then Honeycomb she's with wealthier people. And one thing you can really tell as a writer, more disdainful of their privilege. And she observes it, and she comments on it, and she doesn't, and she sort of almost pities them, the privilege. Like the young children that she's in care with, you can tell that she's having an internal debate about how should she push them to being like more activists in the world and caring for like opening their eyes as to their own privilege, or should she hold back? And she decides to hold back. And it's sort of, there's a passage I just read where she said something like, well, if she were a different type of person, she would have instilled a kind of wish to be a do-gooder in the young women. And it's almost as like she says she could have done this, but she decided not to. And it's good, because I think what it shows is that she's glad she's not them, even though she is somewhat envious of their privilege or the fact that they have money. But you can sort of tell she's not that envious of them. She doesn't want to be them, and she wants to forge her own path. And her biography she went off on her own, and I was just reading, and I'll come back 'cause she'll be a constant in the channel reading her books. She ended up living on her own pretty early on because of her own family being impoverished, but she ended up being very close with H.G. Wells. I think they had an affair, and then also he encouraged her to write. So that's interesting that she was aligned with this famous writer. And she ended up marrying a very interesting artistic, he's an artist, Alan Odell. And he's a very strange, he was someone who had very, very long hair that he would twist out around on his head, and like a total bohem. And he's very long nails, very strange looking person, but his art is actually very interesting in a Beardsley-esque, Aubrey Beardsley type way. So fascinating artistic couple. And her life is, I just think it's so interesting and wonderful. Babbling thoughts about Richardson. The light is really annoying right now. I apologize. And that's that, and I think I will give it a rest. I had a couple of ideas of things I might read for Shorty September, but I think the video is so long I'll wait until next week and we'll see what I end up with here. Won't make the video longer than it should be. Thank you all for watching, and I will be back next week. Bye-bye.